listener production.
G'day, it's Rusty here, all set for part 3 of my podcast with Australian Motorsport Hall of Famer Neal Bates. If you've landed here before checking out stages 1 and 2, parts 1 and 2, make sure you head back to the library and have a listen to those. There's a story about a test with Peter Brock that you are unlikely to have ever heard before. How the organisers of an event early in his career seated him well down the field and thought there was no way that this wild child driver from Canberra could possibly be challenging the established stars of the day for the outright win. The co-driving partnership with Coral Taylor, one of the longest in the history of the sport. The stern words of wisdom from motorcycle hero Michael Dowson. The call-ups from Team Toyota Europe, and his rivalry that was an equally close friendship with the late Possum Bourne. We begin part 3 by continuing to talk about his time in supercars when endurance drives fitted around the rally program. Was there a drive there that perhaps didn't happen? Was there a phone call to go and do something? Either it might even be a co-drive that you would perhaps like to have done that didn't perhaps eventuate?
Look, I probably made a few wrong decisions there. At the time, I drove with Paul Wheel initially, and Paul was very young, and then I got the opportunity to go to Seaton, so I thought that was a great thing, and then I have a look at that, and the whole Wheel team lifted, had a really good car, and I'd said no to Keys, which Keys didn't like. People don't, people like Keys don't like no. So then we went there that year, and I was in the Seaton car, and they probably lacked a little bit of pace that year, and the Wheel car went incredibly well. So I looked at that and thought, shit, I probably should have stayed in the Wheel car. There. And Greg Crick took that drive, and he was. But yeah, no, not really. I did a couple of years with Seaton's, did a couple of years with Double O Motorsport, driving with Rodney Forbes.
That's right.
And then the last one we did was, in Tony Noski's car in Excess car.
Mega.
So I think I finished in the top 10 a few times and, enjoyed it, and it was an amazing experience, and something to look back on.
Pretty cool that a rally driver, just as Colin Bond had done, from that crossover sense, was coming and playing in supercars. We see Shane Van Gisbergen now dabbling in some rallying. What are your observations of him as a rally driver from the supercar side of things?
Yeah, it goes back to what we spoke about an hour ago, whatever it was. You talk about car control. Shane has incredible car control. He has a huge interest in rallying. He grew up in a rally family.
He loves it.
Yeah. He loves it, and he was always going to be good at it. And probably the highlight for me in supercars wasn't actually in a race, but I actually did a test with Double O Motorsport at Winton, and it was Lowndes, Crompton, Rodney Forbes and myself. And we were at the end of day 1, and I was the fastest out of everyone, so in front of Lowndes and Crompton. And I remember Crompton saying to me, don't get too carried away because these things are so finicky. You come back tomorrow. Because it was the first time they'd let me do my own setup.
Gotcha.
So here I am at the end of the day. I've gone faster than Craig Lowndes and Neil Crompton. So I'm thinking I'm an absolute genius. And Crompton said to me that night, just be careful because they're so finicky. And what was right? And I go, nah. I'm thinking.
We're onto something here.
I'm onto something, and I'm a genius. And I went back the next morning. I was about a second and a half off the pace or something. How can this be? But it was pretty cool at the end of the day to be. We did green tyre runs, and
definitely
here's some rally driver that's a co-driver that comes along and was fastest at the end of the day. So that was a pretty cool thing.
Pretty cool thing. I'll get to the boys in a moment. Have they got a little thing in the back of their minds that they might like to do a Bathurst one day? Either of them?
Yeah. Both of them have interest in circuit racing for sure. And that's probably stemmed through me. Both of them, drive very well on tarmac as well as gravel. And when they go and do tarmac super specials, or you look at South Australia last year, I think at the end of the first night, which was around in South Australia.
I've got a mental blank now. Anyway, keep going.
They were so far ahead of everyone else by the end of that night that the rally was almost over to a degree. So for sure they got skills on tarmac, and they've done some 86 rounds, and I think it's still taking them a bit of getting used to of all these other people around them smashing into them.
Can we talk about a little story? You mightn't like going back over this, but the Corolla WRC car you had sold, you took it to Perth. Was it for the WRC round?
Yeah, WRC round.
Took it to the WRC round. And I think the intent was you might run it a little bit and then sort of park it so it was safe for the sale.
Yep.
But Coral convinced you, no, come on, one final time. Let's go. What happened?
Rally Australia, we had the World Rally Cars sold, so it was 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to remember, we're talking, a team that doesn't have huge budgets. The sale of that car was $440,000.
And important for the next phase of whatever you're doing.
For the next phase of whatever we're doing. So, a team in the Czech Republic was coming over. They paid a deposit. They were taking the car straight after the rally. So they'd sent someone over who we knew from, who'd worked at Toyota Team Europe, and he was the person to look over the car and tell them, it's a good car and you should definitely buy it and all that. So we'd had the discussion beforehand that it was pretty risky in, and maybe we should have a mysterious electrical problem or whatever. So we do day one. There's other cars over there, privateers who'd driven for Toyota Team Europe and all that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, after day one, we're leading all those people. So we were the first privateer in front of Tasman, in front of all the other European privateers, all that sort of stuff. So we're doing incredibly well. And then, I said, I'm really nervous about this. We should just, tomorrow morning on the way to the first stage, have a fuel pump failure or whatever. But Coral and, Darryl was in total agreement with me. So
Darryl Bush.
Darryl Bush. Yeah. So then Coral talked us around that night and said, we're doing so well, So then we're in the second stage that morning, and we come to a corner that was Coral has called to me a right 5, which is a really fast corner, but it was a right 3. We go off the outside of the warp speed roll several times, and I just get out of the car. We were so lucky. It was that it had been logged on the outside and it was all ploughed, so we rolled a few times and that, but it didn't do a lot of damage to the car. But I was convinced Coral had called a right 5, which is a really fast corner, and I said, you called that wrong. So she was, beside herself. Yeah. So there was one of the few times where she actually walked off and left me to it because I think my mood wasn't that pleasant to be around. Okay. So and then we got back that night with the car, and they got the in-car camera out. And
back then they were recorders, weren't they?
Yeah, they were recorders, and I think Scott Young came over and they've played the recorder, and Coral called right 3, and I just misheard it, and maybe I wasn't concentrating properly. I did after that. I thought I was struggling with hearing a bit and whatever, and I went and got my ears flushed out, and all of a sudden the world became a much noisier place.
Oh, wow.
But, so that was... But the most amazing part about that, we were so fortunate, didn't do any structural damage to the car. We had most of the panels to put back on it, and they still took the car for the same money.
Fantastic.
So,
Bit of a heart-racing moment, I'll bet, while you were juggling all that, I'll bet. You brought up Scott Young there a moment ago. David White, an old boss from Channel 10, and Scott would often pair up in a second car that you would run at Targa. You would be competing with Coral, and often they would be in maybe a production spec Lexus or something rather, and you would run that for them. And one particular year, I don't know if you remember, but Graham Brown, Mort, who used to work with Peter Brock and, legendary figure in the...
Which Mort was at that day in 1986 with a Brock Commodore.
Was he? When you were at Calder? Yep. Fantastic. Well, he is drafted in by them or you or whatever to be the kind of... mechanic on the run, when you're splitting resources and at different ends of the queue and what have you at Targa. So I'm Johnny on the spot, turning up to do a bit of reporting, and I see them there on the side of the road. I think we're going into Hobart, and David says, it's got a little bit of a vibration. He was a little bit unnerved by it, or not massively, but just he was conscious of it. So Mort looks at me and he winks and he gets a hammer and he gets underneath the Lexus and he just sort of banged the floor. He didn't do one damn thing to it. And then he slid out from underneath the car and he goes, I fixed it. And he looks at me and he goes, don't you say a word. And off David and Scott went. They were great years, weren't they, when you were, and that's become, in the way that you've done that, where I'm leading here, is that you do a bit of customer spec things here. Now, in addition to your own Yaris program, you've either assisted people with the purchase of a car that you've had, and you've helped with the maintenance and running of it and so on, haven't you?
Yeah, we do some customer work over the years. You have a look. Last year we ran Richie Dalton in the Australian Rally Championship, and Lewis won that championship. Harry was second, Richie Dalton was third. So
amazing.
As a team, it was obviously a very, very good result, and for Richie, it was an incredibly good result. To be on the podium in the championship was something that he dreamt about. So we have run various cars over the years for various people. And look, I've also tried a lot over the years. I suppose see myself as a bit of a I've been involved in the Australian Rally Championship for a very long time. Just recently, we went to Tasmania, and a young guy in Tassie, Bodie Reading, did incredibly well there. So at the end of the rally, I said to him, look, if you want to do perf, I'll take your car over for nothing for you. So you can do it. When the year Nathan Quinn won the championship, we carted his car around for him for the whole year for nothing. You look at Taylor Gill, who's gone overseas at the moment. I've
done some media training with him. Good young kid.
Yeah. Before he went, I took him out and we gave him a drive of the Yaris, because it's going to be very similar cars to what he's driving over there. So I just thought it was a good opportunity, because I know that when I went over there, I'd never driven a left-hand drive car, never driven a car like that. So I look at my own experiences and, if I can help him understand the car, understand what he's doing, give him a leg up before he gets there, it's going to help. It's going to help. When Troy Dow was at his lowest with his leukemia, I was talking to him in hospital and I said, just get yourself better, Troy, and at the end of the year you can come and have a test in the Yaris. So we took the Yaris over to Mount Gambier to an autocross track over there, and he drove it over there, and it was just incentive. So I try and do whatever I can to help young people make the championship better, encourage people, because I think it's an amazing sport and it's an amazing, cool championship, and it's, to me, it's still the most spectacular form of motorsport that there is.
This rally business sure is exhilarating, but there are rare occasions it goes pear-shaped. Just ask this guest from the Rusty's Garage Library.
Neither of us remember what happened, but we had a serious crash over a jump, which we had marked as something like a 9 left over jump, which is flat out 180 kilometres per hour, and jumped into trees and stumps and all of those crazy things. And then I woke up in hospital, and the first person I see in front of me is actually Sue Evans and Jack Monkhouse and Simon Evans and Coral Taylor and all these people. And I'm in the hospital, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what's happened here.
The US-based Aussie co-driver shares an incredible comeback story from that crash in her Rusty's Garage episode. Rhiannon also said Rusty shouldn't be allowed anywhere near pace notes. He's not bad with a mic though.
As someone who is on that basis as a many-time champion, as a team owner, you have this sort of custodian aspect of what you're talking about there. If your crystal ball goes, what things would you like to see the ARC maybe do over the next 5 to 10 years?
If I have a look at people talk about some of the best times in rallying, and they talk about in the late 70s when there was the factory Ford teams and Nissan teams, and then they talk about, Tasman World Rally Cars, but probably when I look at it, the strongest that I've seen it was in the early 2000s.
Mitsubishi were there and all sorts.
Mitsubishi were there, the Pettas were there. I look at that, and that was when we built the Group NP cars, and if you had an average stage, you could be ninth, fastest, and you sort of go, geez, ninth, what in the hell? And I have a look now, and I've got to say this is a credit to Adrian Coppin. You have a look now, there's a huge amount of cars there, a huge depth to the field, and you had a look in Perth or whatever, there's a huge depth to the field and a whole lot of competitors. So it's heading to the moment where it's as strong a championship that it's ever been in history. If you ask me what I wanted to see, would be more coverage of it.
Yes,
for sure. It's lacking that at the moment for sure. But as far as cars, depth of fields, everything, it's all very strong. But if there was one thing for sure, more coverage.
Gotcha. In addition to what you're doing here, the 86 series in Australia has more or less exploded over the last, I don't know how many years it's been running here now, to the point where it's got a multi-tiered sort of structure. You guys have been heavily involved here at Neal Bates Motorsport in the development of the cars, the build package, if you like, when a customer buys them to want to go racing. Tell us about that, because it's a massive undertaking, mate, isn't it? And the new generation car is literally beneath us here. It's just been revealed in the last few weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, the 86 series was a brainstorm between Mike Breen, and that wasn't long before he retired, Neil Crompton and myself. And if you have a look, Mike Breen had been involved in the TR7 series back in the day when he worked for Leyland. He'd been involved in the Laser series when he worked for Goodyear, and the 86 was the perfect car for it, and it came out, and that was spoken about, and then we went and developed a car, and the idea of that was to be an affordable package that was on the main game, it's interesting, you look at the time when it was announced and everyone goes, you won't get 10 cars, you won't this. These days of social media, everyone's an expert, keyboard expert. So,
and then you rock up to Bathurst and the field is massive, absolutely massive.
We rocked up to the first round at Winton. I've never been so nervous in my life. I think there's 30, I can't remember, it was either 38 or 39 cars. Like you're standing in the pit lane at Winton, they're just going out and out and out, and you go, when's this going to finish? And, you're thinking, we're in charge of this. I hope they keep going round and round. And they went round and round. Look, initially there was a couple of tiny little teething issues, but, essentially that series is run incredibly well. We've got a whole lot of champions out of it that are now in supercars. We've got the Will Browns.
Including your nephew, who's had great success in it, who's now running in Super 2. Yeah,
we've got the Brock Feeneys, we've got the Will Browns, we've got the Cameron Hills, we've got the Declan Frasers. So it has been an amazing series with some amazing rallying. Amazing rallying, and we've seen some incredible drivers come out of it.
Yeah, amazing. Well done.
And it's when you look at what we sat down and spoke about initially, it's ticked every single box.
Oh, well, that's to your point. You all brought different strengths to that table, and the execution from beginning to end, I think, from the quality build of the cars to obviously Mike's sort of vision for what it should be, and Crompo's execution around the administration, even the social media and marketing that Toyota put behind it. I mean, it's just a great thing, and the fact that it's unearthed a bit of talent and helped them take that next step is tremendous.
Yeah, Crompton and Mike had the ideas. We just did all the work.
Oh, did you?
They'll both laugh at that.
They will. Just diving in here quickly, don't misinterpret this. It's Neal being tongue-in-cheek. He said it with a smile, knowing full well that it's his collective work with Mike Breen and Neil Crompton that created something incredibly professional, and it's delivering on its aim of cost-effective, ultra-competitive racing that helps those with talent on the pathway. Now back to the conversation. The Yaris is a world-class thing, mate. Just give people a little snapshot of it, if you will. So I think we're talking three-cylinder, turbocharged. What you guys have built here has sort of been recognised globally, I think, in terms of what you've been able to achieve with it too, hasn't it?
Yeah, look, it's a very cool car. We're the first people in the world to build a GR Yaris Rally car. We've had inquiries from all around the world wanting people to build us one, but we just don't have the capacity to do that. And the thought of that is scary. Just the amount of time, and the amount of effort, and everything into building them. We're not big enough for that, but it's a nice thing. We had the head of Gazoo Racing World Rally Team come out and have a look at it, along with Norio from Toyota Gazoo Racing in Europe. They're watching every single rally where we got engines from TGRE, and they're incredibly helpful and interested in what we're doing. So that's a huge feather in our cap.
That hand-in-glove connection is a massive feather in your cap, mate. That's tremendous.
And it's so good to be involved with them, and it's been an incredible journey with these cars. We built them, 2 of them in 4 months, which was hell, and then went to the first rally and got first and second in them. So it's been an amazing car, an amazing journey with them, and they are very cool things. Like, as you say, 1.6 litre, 3-cylinder, 32 mil restrictor. They make a massive amount of torque and around 300 horsepower, 6-speed sequential gearbox, and if you have a look at that, we've competed against a whole lot of Rally 2 cars and been very competitive. So it's pretty cool to build something here that we can compete with cars that have had a lot more money and a lot more time and effort put into them. It's a pretty cool thing. But in saying that, we build cars because we have to. Like Toyota are building a Rally 2 car now, and we can't wait for that. As soon as that happens. We'll get one. I look, so many times over the years we've built cars because we have to build cars because Toyota haven't been producing one to use in rallying, so we've had no choice but to build them. But that's it. I enjoy that. It's incredibly good to do, but it's hard work.
I'll bet. With the exception of some of the extra massive overgrown wings and things, just to stand back and look at them and then look at the build quality inside them, it is almost WRC spec, mate. So you're to be congratulated to be able to do that from basically Australia, from Canberra. Yes, okay, there is a little bit of connection to other things, but by and large, from here, that's mega when you sit back and think about it.
Look, it's amazing. Have a look at what we spoke about before when Bjorn Waldegaard drove the ST185, and he said,
"Come a long way, mate."
Nice road car, and what we've all learnt as a team, what Daryl's learned, what Ant's learned, what Sam's learned. A couple of years ago, I sent Harry and Lewis and Sam over to Rally Finland, because unless you see this stuff, you don't understand it. You need to know what the world's best practice are if you're going to try and build the world's best practice. So, we're not shy in sending them over to have a look and understand and copy and, know what's best. And if you have a look at these latest Yarises, they're underweight. They've got a whole lot of ballast in them. They've got an incredibly low centre of gravity. If you have a look at us over a team, we've gone from modifying a road car, rally car, to building something that's almost as good as a Rally 2 car.
Agreed.
So it's a pretty cool and you have a look at Darryl's taught himself to do CAD drawings, Sam's a mechanic by trade, taught himself to be an incredibly good fabricator and do our own body shells. Ant's learnt the whole Bosch stuff, and we do our own wiring. We do, so as a team, I'm incredibly proud of what we do, what we've achieved, and how far we've come to understand to build something as good as most other things in the world.
I want to take that word pride and extend that to the two boys. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, imagine that a father and two sons would be in the record books as Australian rally champions? I mean, that globally, in a statistic sense, is nigh unheard of, mate. Just remarkable.
Yeah, it's something that, it's till you say it, I probably don't think about it, but it is a remarkable achievement, and I thought I'd actually got away with them being involved in rallying, because Harry was an AIS race walker and Lewis was the first grade soccer player, and all of a sudden one day they came. Well, Harry got compartment syndrome in his legs, and had to have an operation for that. And then
he was almost going to be looking at potential Olympic material, wasn't he? Like AIS, that's the development for that. I mean, he was very serious, wasn't he? With that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like he was training every morning, every night, and but then when he got compartment syndrome in his legs, he had to have an operation on that, and then they cut the walk program, and then Coral couldn't do a rally in Queensland. He navigated for me, which was a mistake, and all of a sudden he had the rally bug, and But look, they've both done incredibly well. Harry started off in rallying, had a dream run. His second ever rally, Coral navigated for him, which was at Narooma in a front wheel drive Corolla, and I remember the director of the rally sending someone over to the service park to see whether I was in there. Because
Really?
he was leading the rally against four-wheel drives.
Now, checking you weren't subbing.
They honestly thought I was,
Wow.
I was subbing and they wouldn't find me in the service park. Wow. So, and then Lewis's start to rallying was a bit harder because he had a few, in his first ARC round he was doing incredibly well, and then he slipped off the road into some dry grass, then the car caught fire and burnt to the ground, and so he had a pretty rough start to it all. But it probably took him a little while to come back. But I look now, they're both incredibly competent drivers. Harry went over to New Zealand last year, and whilst he had a pretty average run over there, he still got 3 fastest times in WRC2, and we probably didn't put enough into that rally, didn't do enough testing, hadn't driven on the tyres before, but he certainly showed that he had the speed. He's got, you look now, they're both very, very competent and doing incredibly well.
Things.
And, people always say you must be proud of that, but probably the thing that I'm most proud of is they're both nice kids. Never given us any trouble.
Yeah. Can I? You've got some quotes in here. I don't know if you want me to share them. They're on the whiteboard.
Yeah, no, that's all good.
Lewis Bates on the left says, "My dream is to play for the Socceroos, to go to the ARC and to win the championship. My dream is to win the World Cup." That's Lewis Bates, 2003. Harry Bates, 2003, has written, "My journey," beautiful handwriting too, "My journey is to go to the Australian and World Rally Championship. My dream is to win the World Rally Championship." I'd love to think the boys, mate, would, Harry's been to New Zealand, as you talked there before, to do a bit more international stuff. Do you think that is in the pipeline maybe for them, depending?
It's hard to know that. It's, it's probably been very hard for the opportunity to do that because, he drive for Toyota and they've never had a car for that before. So to do New Zealand, we had to obviously get a Skoda and, to put all that together, you have a look at that. Harry worked for 6 months trying to make that deal all come together, and you look at that, he was probably almost a wreck before he got to the rally. But given that Toyota are doing a Rally 2 car in the future, there could well be opportunity there. We'll just have to have a look at that along the way and see for sure if there was any opportunity. They'd both take it. Good. With open arms.
Don't compare them as drivers because I don't reckon that's fair with your kids. 2-part question. A, do you get nervous, or did you ever get nervous? Because, I mean, you started doing stuff with them like hill climbs and maybe Kana crosses and stuff from 12 years onwards, didn't you?
Yep.
So did you ever get nervous at all for them? Did you? Because it changes. All of a sudden, you're the guy who doesn't mind being that wild child with long hair and what have you, to now it's your own flesh and blood. That's a very different thing.
It is, and it is incredibly hard. You know, it took, like, I watched Coral go through this, and I used to sort of think, I thought I'd dodged a bullet and that wasn't going to be happening. But I do find it incredibly difficult. I do get incredibly nervous. Mm-hmm. I struggle to watch Rally Safe because sometimes the dots stop and, so then you think that they've had an off or whatever. And I have got better with it over the time, but I walk several kilometres up and down the service park every rally while they're out on the stages, out of nerves. And, as I say, I have got better, but I'm still struggling with it. And I remember a few years ago having this conversation with Alistair McRae at a rally going, as we're pacing up and down the service park.
Because he's going through that now too, isn't he?
Having a laugh at each other going, how do we end up here?
They are wired differently, though, aren't they? That's where I'm going. I don't want to compare their driving because I don't think that's fair. But you talked a little bit about Lewis before, and I mean, Harry's immensely organised, but they are different. But they go about the when they're in the behind the wheel, they are both immensely competitive human beings, aren't they? Yeah.
Look, Harry probably does it more naturally, and he's the most amazing thing is growing up. Lewis was a wild child and Harry was a conservative one. But when it comes to rallying now, I'd probably call it the other way around.
Really?
So
really? Okay.
Harry's just in there and at it, and and Lewis thinks about it more, and he's probably a little bit more like I was as a driver. He's probably a bit more calculated, thinks about it a little bit more, probably thinks about the car because he works on it. Probably, Harry doesn't give a shit about any of that. He's just into it. So, they do go about it very differently, but Lewis has, proven in the last 12 months that he's becoming very, very good. And, Harry's definitely looking in the mirror.
Cool. Pride was the word you used before. The extension of that pride also goes to Molly Taylor. I know you have been overseas and stood on the side of the road and watched her driving and then offered feedback in a kind of coaching sense. There's lots of people that have been involved in that, and primarily she is a very big driving force on her own. But what she's been able to achieve, mate, is tremendous. It's remarkable on the global stage, really, isn't it? So,
yeah, for sure. Look, obviously I've done a hell of a lot with Molly over the years and still do. You look a couple of years ago, when she got replaced at Rosberg's, and then she was in a bit of a probably a bit of a dark place from
what's the future hold?
What's the future hold? Started doubting her ability, and then when she got the gig with Veloce, I said right. So we went and did some driver training and some stuff where I put her against Harry in a car that they hadn't driven before, and some high intensity stuff where they was short, quick, because if you have a look at Extreme E, it's all about going quickly straight away. And and to see Molly bounce back from that and do what she's been doing this year in Extreme
Rosberg
E.
must wonder what he let go, mate, seriously.
Where she's now the fastest woman again, which is where she started in this whole thing. It makes, I said to Molly after the round before or whatever, I said it's a hell of a lot easier watching this when you're winning than when you're driving around doubting yourself. So I said, need to keep this up, definitely.
Well done.
So, look, she's an incredibly good driver in her own right, for sure. And, hopefully we'll see her back in the ARC at some stage.
I hope that happens sooner rather than later. You like driving trucks. The Peterbilt is something pretty special. When you go over the Nullarbor, Coral drives it sometimes too. Do you do the Hollywood shifts and she's up at night driving, or how does that all work?
Who told you that? Someone's... Look, I actually drove over on my own this time, which is only the second time I've ever done it. Every other time, I don't know how many times I've been across the Nullarbor, probably 60 or 70 times or something.
Chad, Harry and the boys all tell me, if you get in the car in the passenger seat, one of the first things you do is turn the radio music down. Is that right?
I look at the world and everyone idolises these singers who generally are cocaine addicts and, they're all in and out of rehab and whatever, and we idolise all these people. I just don't understand that whole world.
Stuff.
But anyway, that's if we behave like that, we'd be all over the news everywhere and wouldn't have a drive and wouldn't have a gig and wouldn't have anything.
Totally. Can we highlight, just as we come toward the end here, someone pretty special in this whole journey, and that's your lovely wife, mate. So Harry reminded me that in 1997...
I was going to bring that up if you didn't mention it anyway.
Jane, I think at the time you had a 2-year-old in Harry. Lewis had just come along, if I've got that right. You were driving the Super Touring Camry, doing some international stuff, some local stuff, no doubt other things around Toyota, etc. You were on the road fundamentally 260 of the 365 days. That was a massive commitment from her. I mean, it has been the whole way, but that in particular.
This came up only a few weeks ago, and I said to Jane, I look at that now, and this probably came up because Harry's just had a baby. I think, how could have I been so selfish? But Jane said, that was your job. And the most amazing thing about that, I met Jane in, we got married in 1989, and, Jane had an interest in rallying because she was friends with David Eadie at the time, who I was competing with in the New South Wales Rally Championship. But, they say behind every good bloke is a stronger woman, and, that is 100% the case in my life. Jane has just been the rock that looks after everything while I, work stupid hours, go away all the time, drive race cars. But, as you say, in 1997, Harry was 2, Laws was born. I did the Australian Rally Championship. I did the Super Touring Championship. I did the Enduros in the supercars. I did the Race of Champions. I did,
What a year.
Targa. I was just away more than what I was here. And I also did 3 rounds of the World Rally Championship that year. We did New Zealand, Indonesia, Rally Australia. So, the amount I was away was ridiculous, and Jane never, I was just off doing my thing, and Jane never complained, which I just look back at now and think, how could have I been that selfish? But I suppose it's a very selfish industry that we're in at times, and you need that support at home, and I've had that my whole life, which I'm incredibly grateful for, and what can you say to thank that? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, amazing. It's incredible.
Amazing. You have given me a couple of notes here. We've talked about 0-0, Glenn Seaton, Paul Wheel, and so on. You've noted here 12 hours. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I did quite a few 12-hour races. I did them with Toyota in the early 90s with MR2s, and we won our class several times. We came 4th outright twice in an MR2 in a class car. Once we were 6 seconds off being on the podium, which was behind the RX-7s. So they were an incredibly good car because you could drive them flat out all day. They didn't wear brakes out. Nothing broke on them. So you just did qualifying laps every lap for 12 hours, which was really cool fun. And then, at the end, while all these other things are smouldering wrecks running around 10 seconds a lap off the pace, you're hauling them in, and if it went for a few more hours, we would have been on the podium. So they were enjoyable days. We had Fangio come out.
That's right.
From a couple of times, and that was really cool. He was a really nice guy, a very quick driver. Then I did the 12-hour a few times with Colin Osborne in sleekers, in class cars. Once again, got some incredibly good results because they were another car that you could drive around, flat out all day.
Was there a Viper in there somewhere too?
Yeah, I drove a Dodge Viper in the 3-hour race, which, that was an incredibly cool experience because you look at a Viper as a pig of a car and heavy and no brakes and all that sort of stuff, which, no brakes was definitely a truth. But the interesting part in that race, we qualified on pole, and it actually got fuel surge on the lap. So I could have been on pole by more. And then everyone thought it was going to run out of brakes. And I remember Alan, when I look back at the coverage, Alan Jones was commentating and goes, this thing is really fast, but it'll run out of brakes soon. And then, lap 10 and lap 20 and lap 30 and, and it's still forging ahead. And also it had, everyone thinks it's going to be heavy on fuel, but it had incredibly good fuel consumption. And we hooked up a temperature gauge to the brakes, and we had a set of brakes in it that if we didn't go over 650 degrees, they're an endurance pad, they'd last forever. So we had a digital readout on the dash with brake temperature, so we could keep an eye on the brake temperature, and we just kept it under 650. Did the whole race without a brake pad change. And I drove the first stint. I was driving it was Ray Lintot's car.
Yep.
And we were driving American guy, Neil Hammond, who raced Vipers in America. He was the co-driver, and he came over and brought a tune over with him, and it ran, incredibly lean, was incredibly good on fuel. And, we should have won that race, but it was the Ferrari ended up winning, but we got black flag because it was blowing a bit of smoke because the diff got so hot it started melting the diff seal, and it was dripping diff oil onto the exhaust, so they brought us into the pits I look back at it, it was, not sure that we should have been called into the pits at all, but we were, because the Ferrari was coming second and it was a Ross Palmer event, and we'll have whatever conspiracies we want. But the end result is, the car was incredibly fast. We made it do the whole race without changing brake pads, and then at the end, even though we didn't win or anything, we spent about 6 hours at scrutineering, pulling the fuel tank out because no one could believe it went that far on fuel.
Wow!
So it was an interesting weekend, and interesting that one, we got the brakes holed up, and secondly, we went far longer than everyone else on our load of fuel, which made it. And it was an incredibly well balanced car.
You brought up Ray Lintott there a moment ago, former car dealer in Sydney. I reckon he bought an ST165 at one point into the country.
That was the car I drove in Rally Australia in 1991, and a couple of incredible stories about that. Once, when he got that car, he wanted me to do some rally driving lessons with him, and we went up to Hiles, which is where
here in Canberra,
in Canberra, a stage in Canberra that I know incredibly well, and I drove him along that stage with him in the passenger seat. And when we got to the end, he was literally hyperventilating, like he just went, "You got to be kidding." So then we spent the day, and we started off with doing handbrake turns, and he said, and at one stage he got it wrong, and he said, "Why can you do handbrake turns and I can't?" And I go, "Well, when we were 16, Ray, you went to Parramatta Road to make your first million. I was out in the forest doing handbrake turns. So now we're in a situation where you can afford to buy this and you're very wealthy, and I'm bloody good at handbrake turns." So,
the memory I have of that car, Mark Taylor, Coral's husband, had driven a media car on the Australian Safari, and I was with him for that. And I had to return something to them after the event, and so they were in, I think, Sydney's northwest at the time. So I went not far from where I'd grown up, and I went around to drop it off, whatever it was, and Mark gives me this kind of wry smile, and he goes, hey, come on, I'll show you something in the garage. And he opened the garage of their house, and there was this plain white, I think it was plain white, was it? WRC spec car for a while. And did you guys, I think to make it a little bit easier on Ray, I think you put a different chip in it to detune it or something, didn't you?
Because he ran that car in some gravel rallies and then ran it in Targa Tasmania, and we made quite some changes to it just to make it a little nicer and probably a little
user-friendly,
more user-friendly. But the most amazing story with that car, when Ray sold it, he offered it to me. Ray offered me a couple of cars because his 996 Porsche was the most unbelievable car, and we did a whole lot of work on that, including going to Porsche North America and tuning it, and and then for the engine, like on an engine dyno in America, and then but that car Ray offered me for 70 grand. And then it sold a few years later in England because that car won more points than any other car in the World Rally Championship, and it sold for £1.2 million. The other thing that happened when Ray passed away, in his will, there was a clause in the will for me to purchase that 996 Turbo, and at the time it was 90 grand, and it was probably worth 120 or so at the time. But yeah, you got to have the 90 grand spare at the time and all that sort of stuff. And I didn't do that. And it was 3 or 4 years later, they were worth like 400. And now they're probably 600 or 700. So
crazy.
So yeah.
Crazy.
Everyone's got those stories.
Stories, don't they?
Should have.
Don't they? For you to finish. Firstly, Sandown 500. You asked me to bring that up with you. Yeah,
it was probably, in circuit racing terms, it was probably my most exhilarating, exciting race, Sandown 500, and it was when they were GT cars. So I was in a Porsche with Steve Webb.
Yep.
And John Bowe was in the Ferrari, and Steve drove first, and then I hopped in, and we were leading the race, and John Bowe was hunting me down towards the finish, and it came down to the last few laps, and it was an incredibly good race, and we were doing qualifying laps right at the end of a 500k race. John Bowe did end up getting me, but that was, we finished nose to tail.
Unreal.
And it was a very cool race where, I felt like I did an incredibly good job. And
very memorable, special to you. Righto. The car. Is it the 205? Is that, and could it be anything you've driven over time? Doesn't have to be one that you've built. The car.
Probably the 205. When I look at the RA40, that's just the most fun car you could ever drive. But there's something about the 205 that I just have a special bond with. I think we won a lot with it. It was the first proper Group A rally car that we ever built. So
Targa success in it, I think.
Targa success in it. So there is a special bond with that car for sure.
The stage or the piece of road?
Probably the best stage would be a stage. My favourite rally used to be Rally in Melbourne. There was a stage called Akron Way that I just absolutely loved, and that was probably my favourite stage. Yeah.
Okay. From the event that you would perhaps love to have a crack at that you haven't done. Could be anything, circuit, rally, anything.
When you look back and you talked about the WRC and you talked about various things, I don't have if there's one little regret I have.
Don't have regrets, but anyway.
Don't have regrets. But if there was one thing that I probably should have done, which we did talk about a few times, was do a tarmac WRC round.
Okay.
Because, I was always very good on tarmac. I had the rally skills, and I would have, if I look, I would have loved to have gone done Catalonia back, back when it was the essence of a tarmac rally that was more like circuit racing than any other rally. So I would have loved to go and do that just to see how I went.
The win or the moment?
It's interesting, you do so much in your career. Probably when the win, probably the first time I went to Otago, because everyone, including Murray Coote, who I've mentioned Murray quite a few times in this, we're very, very close, and we've done enormous amount of suspension development and stuff over the years. And when I was going to Otago, we built a car to go over there and beat the Escorts, and everyone told me you couldn't be competitive there the first time, including Murray for the first time ever. He probably didn't back me. And I remember getting to the finish of that rally. We're on the transport driving out of the last stage, and I rang Murray and said,
Hey,
thought you couldn't do this the first time. We just won it.
I don't know if I've got my ages right here. I can't even picture you being 58. Am I right in saying you're a grandfather?
Yep.
You still seem so ridiculously young to me. Are you slowing down? I don't ever recall you saying that you've stopped driving. I don't know that you, like, if an event came up now, you'd still go and do it.
I'd still go and do it 100%. The only reason I'm not competing at the moment is time. There was a rally sprint here in Canberra that I went to do twice this year. Got called off once for fires and the second time for flooding. So for sure, I still want to do some rallies, and I haven't stopped that.
Has it been hard to slow down, though, is what I'm asking? Because obviously the business takes a precedence. The boys are going exceptionally well, but that means the thing that you've loved and that has been the backbone of this whole deal slows up. Has that been hard to ease back on that?
For sure it has been, because I love driving, and sometimes I'll hop in a car now and you feel a little bit rusty and you think, geez, I need to do more of this and it was good, with the development of this new 86. I did I did a day at Sandown where it was just a whole day and just
got to enjoy the pleasure of driving.
Got to enjoy the pleasure of driving, and by the end of the day I thought, I'm actually going pretty bloody good here. So, but it takes a little while. The less you do it, that you're not, if I jumped in the rally car now, I would still probably go very quickly, but would I be absolutely on the top of my game now? And the answer to that would be no, because I'm not doing it all the time. When you're doing it all the time, you're right there, you're right on it. But it's, I suppose, a change in life. I still want to compete. I did a hill climb in the 205 there not long ago and set a new class record at the hill climb, and finished second out right behind an open wheeler. And
Cool.
I still love driving. I still want to do it, but it's not my main focus these days. And and when you talk slowing down at the moment, it's totally out of control. But I would like to, I don't mind being busy, but out of control becomes a bit much at times. And I'll be happy when we've built 35 of these 86s and hopefully I can slow down ever so slightly.
You are, one thing that's permeated this whole discussion, and it's been long, thank you, mate, for the time in this. I've wanted to do this for a long while now. Long-termers that are a part of this business, 34 years with Toyota, remarkable for a young man who worked 2 jobs from a very humble upbringing. To think that you've created this, have had the success that you've had, whether it's rallying, Bathurst, podiums and more. The longevity of that relationship is a credit to you, mate, I think. So
yeah, probably. As I say, Toyota are an amazing company. I've worked with some amazing people there. And it's
rare in motorsport now, don't you reckon, to have that sort of, when people change, they get lured by something else, and we're in this fast-paced life that younger people seem to adapt to so well. To have that longevity, mate, is an immensely rare and special thing, I think.
Yeah, look, it is, and I think that I'm an incredibly loyal person. I think that Toyota are an incredibly loyal company, and as I say, I've worked with some amazing people there, and it hasn't always been beer and skittles along the way. There's been some hard times on my part, their part, whatever, but we've always managed our way through it, and we've come out the other end. And like you talk doing other stuff, it's hard to even imagine anything without a bull's horn on it. And it's as I say, I can only thank them, and hopefully they think the same. But it's got years to go. We've got still forging ahead with the 86 series, with the new series and all that sort of stuff. So there's Rally 2 cars coming that obviously we want to get and compete with. So it's certainly not over, but it's been an amazing journey, and I just feel incredibly grateful. And motorsport is, as you would well know, it's incredibly tough climb and at times incredibly hard work. But to do something you're passionate about is, I've driven to work for 40 years now, working out how you go and make something lighter, how you go and get more power, how you go and get a lower centre of gravity, how like to think about improving stuff and that on a daily basis. It's a pretty cool job.
Congratulations on everything. As we wrap this up, are you grandpa? Are you grandfather? What's your nickname?
I'm Pops.
You're Pops.
Yep.
I love it.
I'm Pops, and Jane's Flip.
Why?
Because when Jane doesn't swear, so when something goes wrong, she says flip.
Flip
flip instead of the other. So little Harry's called a Flip, and that's just stuck. So
Awesome.
we'll know Jane as Flip. But, look, as I say, one thing that I've got to emphasise with all this, we're talking with me about all this, but the people behind you that make this happen along the way. I look at myself. I'm not the world's smartest person, but one thing I've learnt in life is to surround yourself with incredibly good people. And I look at Darryl. I look at Peter Reynolds in the earlier years. I look at Sam that we've got here now. I look at Harry and Lawson now, an integral part of the business. I look at Ant. There's some amazing people that have made this happen, and if you looked at me trying to wire a car, that would be not a very pretty exercise. And and you looked at me on CAD, I don't even own a computer, so you have to have the right people and some incredibly smart people. Like I feel that we've got some of the best motorsport brains in this country in this little shed in Canberra.
You should feel proud. They're a reflection of you and how you run this thing. Congratulations. Thank you for sharing the story, mate. It's been great to get you on.
No worries. Thank you very much. I'll be able to listen to it on the way to my next Perth trip.
Sorry if my voice drives you mad. Thank you. Rusty's Garage is written and presented by me, Greg Rust. Series editor and producer is Thomas Dullard. Audio production by Link Kelly. If you've got a guest suggestion, get in touch with me via social media. The Garage, that's where a journey begins with a tank full of passion-fueled stories.